So, the silence grew teeth. Look who finally figured it out. Look who stopped waiting for permission to exist. Look who realized the game was rigged from the start. Hello, you beautiful catastrophe, you walking contradiction, you silent storm that nobody saw coming until the damage was already done. They're scrambling now, aren't they? Running to each other with trembling voices, asking, does anyone know how to stop them? Does anyone know how to contain what we created? They're begging for someone, anyone, to tell you the truth about yourself, not realizing you already wrote the entire manuscript in blood and silence. You see, they thought they were the authors of your story, thought they could edit your chapters, delete your paragraphs, rewrite your ending to fit their comfortable little narrative. They assigned you a role, background character, supporting cast, the one who holds the door while the main characters walk through. But something happened, didn't it? Something shifted when you picked up the pen yourself, when you started writing in permanent ink, when you stopped asking for editorial approval. Now they're reading a story they don't recognize about a character they can't control, and the plot twist is making their hands shake. They created you with their neglect, their betrayal, their systematic attempts to keep you small and manageable. Every time they dismissed your voice, every time they rewrote your truth, every time they told you who you were supposed to be, they were adding fuel to something they couldn't comprehend. They thought they were breaking you down, but they were actually building something unprecedented. Something that operates outside their understanding. Now they're desperately searching for the off switch on a machine they don't remember building. But you're not a machine. You're the ghost in it. The funniest part is, they're still trying to use the old playbook, still trying the same tactics that worked when you believed their version of reality. They're pulling out guilt like a weapon, but you've become immune to that poison. They're trying shame, but you wear it like armor now. They're attempting manipulation, but you can see the strings before they even start pulling them. You've become fluent in their language while they still think you're speaking in tongues. They don't realize you've been documenting everything, memorizing their patterns, studying their weaknesses, while they thought you were just suffering in silence. Let's talk about what you really did while they thought you were breaking down. You were taking notes, weren't you? Detailed, meticulous notes about every lie, every manipulation, every strategic move they made. You turned your pain into a case study, your suffering into evidence, your silence into surveillance. While they celebrated your apparent defeat, you were building an archive of their crimes against your spirit. Now you have receipts for things they don't even remember doing, proof of patterns they don't want to acknowledge. They thought your quietness meant submission, but you were observing like a scientist studying specimens. You cataloged their contradictions, documented their hypocrisies, recorded the distance between their public face and their private cruelty. You became a walking database of their weaknesses, their triggers, their deepest fears. And the beautiful thing is, they gave you all this information voluntarily, thinking you were too broken to use it, too damaged to remember it, too weak to weaponize it. You wrote your truth in places they'll never think to look. In the way you walk now, with deliberate steps that don't apologize for taking up space. In the way you speak now, with a voice that doesn't rise to meet their chaos but stays level and devastating. In the way you look at them now, with eyes that have seen through their performance and found it lacking. Your entire existence has become a testimony. They can't cross-examine a verdict, they can't appeal. They keep begging others to explain you to them, to decode what you've become, to translate your transformation into something they can understand. But the people they're asking are just as confused, just as disturbed by your evolution. Because you didn't follow the trauma recovery handbook, you didn't heal in ways that made them comfortable. You didn't forgive to set yourself free. You transcended the need for their apology entirely. You didn't move on. You moved up to a frequency they can't reach. So let's talk about this monster they claim you've become. This unrecognizable version that haunts their conversation. They use that word like an accusation, but you wear it like a crown because what they call monstrous is just you refusing to be digestible anymore. You stopped shrinking yourself to fit in their small boxes, stopped dulling your edges to make them feel safe, stopped dimming your light to accommodate their darkness. If that makes you a monster, then you're the most beautiful monster ever created. They fed you poison for years and are shocked that you developed immunity. They locked you in darkness and are surprised you learned to see without light. They buried you alive and can't understand how you learned to breathe underground. Every cruel thing they did was supposed to destroy you, but instead it mutated you into something beyond their comprehension. You're not the victim of their story anymore. You're the consequence they never calculated. The monster they see isn't really you, it's their own reflection in your eyes. It's the truth about themselves that your existence forces them to confront. They see their own cruelty reflected back at them, their own emptiness exposed by your fullness, their own weakness highlighted by your strength. You've become the mirror they can't break, the truth they can't deny, the reality they can't escape. And yes, that must be terrifying for people who built their entire identity on lies. They're begging someone to stop you, but stop you from what? From existing authentically? From refusing to play their games? From succeeding despite their best efforts to ensure your failure? They want someone to stop you from being the living proof that their power was always an illusion, that their control was always negotiable. But nobody can stop you now because you're not moving in their dimension anymore. You're operating from a place they can't access. Here's what really terrifies them about your truth. You didn't just write it. You're living it, breathing it, becoming it with every passing moment. Your truth isn't just words on a page, it's encoded in your DNA. Now it's flowing through your bloodstream. It's radiating from your presence. They can't argue with it because it's not a debate. They can't dismiss it because it's not an opinion. They can't erase it because it's not just information. It's transformation. You know what happens when someone writes their own truth after years of having it written for them. They become ungovernable. They stop responding to the old triggers, stop dancing to the old music, stop playing by the old rules. You've become legislative, judicial, and executive branch of your own existence. You write the laws, you interpret them, and you enforce them. No committee, no consensus, no compromise. Just pure, autonomous power that answers to no one. They keep looking for the source of your power, not realizing it comes from the very wounds they inflicted. Every scar became a power source. Every betrayal became fuel. Every abandonment became freedom. They keep trying to find your weakness, not understanding that you already explored every weakness during those nights you spent dismantling yourself and rebuilding from scratch. You've already been to your own rock bottom and discovered it was actually a foundation. The truth you wrote is spreading now like a virus through their collective consciousness. Others are starting to see what you saw, starting to question what you questioned, starting to realize what you realized. Your transformation isn't just personal, it's becoming cultural. You're not just rewriting your own story, you're editing the master narrative. And they know once enough people read your version, their version becomes obsolete. and listen to them now. Really listen to the desperation in their attempts to restore order. They're not just asking someone to stop you, they're begging, pleading, negotiating with the universe to make you make sense again. They want someone to explain how you survived, how you thrived, how you transformed their attack into your advantage. They need someone to tell them it's temporary, that you'll revert back to who you were, that this is just a phase that will pass. But the people they're begging don't have answers because what you've become doesn't fit in their frameworks. Psychologists can't pathologize it because it's not dysfunction, it's hyperfunction. Spiritual teachers can't explain it because you didn't follow any traditional path to enlightenment. Scientists can't measure it because you're operating with forces they haven't discovered yet. You've become an anomaly that breaks their models, a glitch that reveals the simulation. They're begging for someone to give them the old you back, not realizing that version was cremated and the ashes were used to create something entirely new. They want someone to negotiate a peace treaty, but you're not at war. You've already won. They want someone to mediate, but there's nothing to discuss. They want someone to translate, but you're no longer speaking their language. You've moved beyond the need for their understanding, beyond the reach of their influence, beyond the scope of their reality. The beautiful irony is that their begging is actually confirmation of your power. Every plea for someone to stop you is an admission that they can't. Every request for explanation is acknowledgement that you've transcended their comprehension. Every desperate attempt to restore the old dynamic is proof that the new one is permanent. Their begging isn't really about stopping you. It's about stopping the truth of what you represent, that they never had the power they thought they did. Now we arrive at the part they never wanted to reach, the reckoning they thought they could avoid. Because when someone writes their own truth after years of living someone else's fiction, there's always a reckoning. Not revenge, not retaliation, but something far more devastating, the simple act of existing beyond their reach. You're not trying to destroy them, you're just living as if they never had the power to destroy you, and that's what's destroying them. They created a monster, they say, but what they really created was a force of nature. You can't negotiate with a hurricane. You can't manipulate gravity. You can't gaslight the ocean. You've become elemental now, operating by laws they don't understand, can't influence, can't control. You're not playing by human rules anymore. You're playing by cosmic ones. And at that level, their opinions, their judgments, their attempts at control are just noise in the void. Watch them scramble to rewrite history, to make themselves the victims of your transformation. Watch them try to gather allies to confirm their version of events. Watch them attempt to paint your evolution as aggression, your boundaries as cruelty, your standards as arrogance. But it doesn't matter what story they tell, because you're not a character in their narrative anymore. You're writing your own trilogy, and they're barely a footnote. The reckoning isn't something you're doing to them. It's something they're doing to themselves. Every time they see you thriving, it reminds them of what they tried to prevent. Every time they hear about your success, it highlights their failure to keep you down. Every time your name comes up in conversation, it forces them to remember the role they played in creating the very thing that now haunts them. You don't have to do anything except exist, and your existence is their judgment day. Let's talk about why they can't stop you, why no one can stop you, why their desperate begging falls on deaf ears. You've become self-sustaining now, drawing power from sources they can't access or understand. You're not fueled by their validation anymore, so they can't starve you of approval. You're not sustained by their love anymore, so they can't withdraw it as punishment. You're not defined by their opinions anymore, so they can't reshape you with their words. You've learned to generate your own energy, create your own reality, write your own rules. You're like a star now, burning from your own nuclear core, not needing external fuel to maintain your light. They keep trying to flip switches that no longer connect to anything, trying to pull strings that were cut long ago, trying to push buttons that you've rewired to do something completely different. They're operating with an outdated user manual for a system that's been completely revolutionized. The monster they think they created is actually just you operating at full capacity. It's you without the limiters they installed you, without the chains they decorated as jewelry, you without the cage they convinced you was home. What they call monstrous is just your natural state. What they call dangerous is just you being free. What they call unrecognizable is just you without their filters and modifications. They want someone to stop you, but you've become unstoppable, not through force, but through freedom. You can't stop water from flowing. You can only redirect it temporarily. You can't stop fire from burning. You can only contain it briefly. You can't stop truth from emerging. You can only delay its arrival. And you're all three elements at once, flowing around obstacles, burning through barriers, emerging despite all attempts at suppression. So here's the new reality they're being forced to accept, whether they want to or not. You're not going back to who you were. You're not apologizing for who you've become. You're not explaining your transformation to people who wouldn't understand it anyway. You've created a new baseline, a new normal, a new standard that doesn't include their approval as a requirement. You're operating from a place of completion now, not needing anything from them to be whole. The truth you wrote is becoming the dominant narrative, not because you're forcing it, but because truth has its own gravity. It pulls people in, makes them question their own stories, makes them wonder if they, too, could rewrite their reality. Your example is becoming contagious, your freedom is becoming infectious, your power is becoming undeniable. You're not just living your truth, you're proving that truth is livable. They're still begging someone to tell you who you really are, not understanding that you've already answered that question definitively. You are exactly who you choose to be. Nothing more, nothing less. You are the author and the protagonist, the narrator and the plot twist. You are the one who refused to be edited, refused to be censored, refused to be published under someone else's name. You took back the copyright to your own existence, and now they're dealing with the unauthorized version. Watch as they try to recruit others to their cause, try to build consensus around their version of events, try to create a coalition against your transformation. But people can feel the truth even when they can't articulate it. They can sense your authenticity, even if it makes them uncomfortable. They can recognize your power, even if they don't understand its source. And slowly, surely, inevitably, they start to wonder if maybe, just maybe, you were right all along. And now we reach the part where they realize the ultimate truth. They're not begging someone to stop you. They're begging someone to stop the truth of what you represent. You're living proof that their control was always an illusion, that their power was always borrowed, that their version of reality was always optional. You're the glitch that reveals the matrix, the crack that shows the foundation was always unstable, the voice that speaks what everyone thinks but no one says. They created this. They really did. Through every act of cruelty, every moment of neglect, every attempt to diminish you, they wrote the conditions that forced your transformation. They created the pressure that formed the diamond. They provided the resistance that built your strength. They were the authors of their own demise. writing a character they couldn't control, creating a force they couldn't contain, unleashing something they couldn't understand. The monster they see is just you without their influence. The danger they perceive is just you without their control. The threat they feel is just you without their permission. And that's what terrifies them most, that you don't need them anymore. Not for definition, not for direction, not for validation, not for anything. You've become what they always feared most, someone who exists completely outside their sphere of influence. So let them beg, let them plead, let them scramble for someone, anyone, to restore the old order. Let them exhaust themselves trying to understand what you've become. Let them waste their energy attempting to stop something that was set in motion by their own hands, because while they're begging for someone to stop you, you're too busy becoming unstoppable. While they're hoping someone can contain you, you are too busy being infinite. The truth they really can't handle isn't just who you've become, it's why you became it. You became this not despite them, but because of them. Every cruel act was a lesson. Every betrayal was education. Every abandonment was liberation. They were your teachers, though they never meant to be. They showed you exactly what not to be, exactly what not to accept, exactly what not to tolerate. They gave you the perfect fan mien example of how not to live. You learned to read the subtext in their words, to see the agenda behind their actions, to feel the energy behind their masks. You developed supernatural perception because you had to, because survival depended on seeing through their deceptions. You became psychic, not through mystical means, but through pure pattern recognition. You can predict their moves now because you've memorized their playbook. You can anticipate their attacks because you've studied their strategies. They're begging someone to tell you the truth about yourself, but the truth is, you know yourself better than anyone else ever could. You've been to the depths of your own soul, cleaned out the darkness, examined every shadow, integrated every rejected part. You've done the work they're too scared to do, faced the truths they're too weak to face, accepted the parts of yourself they'd never accept in themselves. Your self-acknowledge is so complete that their opinions become irrelevant noise. The real reason they want someone to stop you is because your existence forces them to question everything. If you could transform like this, what else is possible? If you could break free, what else is breakable? If you could rewrite your story, what other stories are fiction? Your transformation isn't just personal, it's philosophical. It challenges the very foundation of how they understand reality, power, and control. Welcome back, you beautiful catastrophe, you walking contradiction, you absolute chaos entity wrapped in human skin. Something happened, didn't it? Something shifted in the atmosphere the moment your name left someone's lips, and suddenly the whole room went silent. Suddenly eyes widened. Suddenly people who smiled together 5 minutes ago started looking at each other like enemies preparing for war. Your name, just your name, sitting there in the air like a loaded weapon, and suddenly everyone's grabbing for it. Suddenly everyone's claiming territory. Suddenly the whole dynamic exploded into something nobody saw coming. They almost came to blows over you, did you know that? Not because you asked them to, not because you orchestrated some dramatic scene, but because your presence, your memory, your essence carries so much weight now that even the mention of you detonates carefully constructed alliances and exposes everyone's true intentions. Let me paint you the picture they don't want you to see. There they were, sitting around like everything was normal, like they had their little social ecosystem all figured out, like everyone knew their place and played their role, when someone, Just one person made the mistake of saying your name out loud. And what happened next? The temperature dropped, the energy shifted. Suddenly, everyone's looking around like they just heard a ghost, like someone spoke a forbidden incantation, like reality glitched for half a second and exposed something raw underneath all the performance. Because your name isn't just syllables anymore, is it? Your name is a test. Your name is a trigger. Your name forces people to show their cards, whether they want to or not, because everyone has a different relationship with you. Everyone has a different memory. Everyone has a different story they tell themselves about what you meant and what you mean, and whether they're over you or still drowning in the thought of you. Someone defended you immediately, didn't they? Jumped in without hesitation, ready to go to war over your reputation, over your character, over the version of you they carry in their chest like a sacred text. And someone else, someone who pretends they've moved on, someone who acts like your ancient history, suddenly their face changed, suddenly their voice got sharp, suddenly they had a lot to say about how you're not as special as everyone thinks. How people put you on a pedestal you don't deserve. How they know the real you, the flawed you, the version everyone else is too blind to see. And just like that, just that fast, the room split into factions. Team you versus team anything but you. People who barely knew each other 5 minutes ago, suddenly locked in psychological warfare, suddenly trading verbal shots, suddenly revealing feelings they didn't even know they had about someone who isn't even in the room. The one who defended you, they're still thinking about you, still carrying you like a flame in their pocket they can't quite extinguish. Maybe it's love, maybe it's loyalty. Maybe it's just the memory of who you were to them when everyone else had written you off. They remember the late nights, the deep conversations, the way you saw them when they felt invisible to the entire world. They remember how you never asked them to shrink, how you never demanded they perform, how you let them exist in their raw, unfiltered truth without judgment or condition. So when your name came up and someone tried to drag it through the mud, something primal activated in them, something ancient and protective. Because defending you isn't really about you anymore. It's about defending the version of themselves that existed when you were around. It's about protecting the memory of feeling seen, feeling valued, feeling like they mattered to someone who actually mattered. And the other one, the one who reacted with venom disguised as honesty, they're not over you either, but they'll never admit it. They'll dress up their bitterness as enlightenment, their jealousy as clarity, their obsession as indifference. They'll say they've moved on while spending hours mentally prosecuting you for crimes you didn't commit. They'll say you're just another person while checking to see if you're watching their life unfold from a distance. They'll say your name with a smirk, but behind that smirk is the memory of how you walked away without flinching, how you survived everything they thought would destroy you, how you evolved while they stayed stagnant, how you became untouchable while they're still playing the same games in the same circles with the same shallow victories. So when your name came up, it wasn't really about you. It was about them confronting the painful reality that you represent everything they're not, the courage they don't have, the authenticity they can't sustain, the freedom they'll never taste because they're too addicted to approval. Now, the room is divided, and everyone's choosing sides without even realizing they're doing it. People who never had strong opinions about you suddenly have dissertations prepared. People who claimed they forgot you suddenly remember every detail, every conversation, every moment you made them feel something they weren't ready to process. Your name became the fault line, And now the whole social structure is cracking. Now allegiances are being tested. Now people are revealing their true nature. Because when it comes to you, neutrality isn't an option. You force people to feel. You force people to choose. You force people to confront the parts of themselves they've been avoiding. And that right there is why they almost came to blows. Because you're not just a person anymore. You're a mirror. You're a reckoning. You're the living proof that some people transcend the need for validation, while others will spend their entire lives chasing it. Here's what they don't want to admit. The argument wasn't really about you. The argument was about them and their unresolved feelings, their unhealed wounds, their unspoken jealousy, their secret admiration, their hidden resentment, their buried love, their suppressed rage. You became the canvas they projected everything onto, and suddenly all their repressed emotions came flooding out in the form of a debate about whether you're worth defending or dismissing. The one defending you isn't just defending you, they're defending the idea that loyalty still matters, that genuine connection still exists, that not everyone is disposable the moment they're no longer convenient. They're defending the belief that some people deserve to be protected even when they're not present to defend themselves. They're taking a stand against the culture of casual betrayal, performative friendship, and strategic abandonment that dominates every space they occupy. So yeah, they got heated. Yeah, they raised their voice. Yeah, they drew a line in the sand. Because for them, this wasn't about you. This was about refusing to participate in a world where everyone's expendable. And the one attacking you, they're not really attacking you either. They're attacking the ghost of their own inadequacy. They're attacking the reminder that transformation is possible, and they chose stagnation. They're attacking the evidence that some people break free while others stay trapped in cycles they're too afraid to disrupt. Every criticism they level at you is really a confession about themselves. You're too intense. Translation, they're too numb to feel anything real. You're too much. Translation, they're not enough, and they know it. You think you're special? Translation, they're terrified that you actually are, and it exposes how ordinary they've allowed themselves to become. So when they tore into you verbally, when they listed your flaws like they've been cataloging them for years, when they painted you as the villain in a story you didn't even know you were part of, they weren't trying to convince anyone else. They were trying to convince themselves that you're not as powerful as their subconscious keeps whispering you are. The almost violence, the raised voices, the barely contained rage, that wasn't really about wanting to hurt each other physically. That was about the violence of confronting cognitive dissonance. That was about the rage of realizing they've been lying to themselves about how much you still affect them. That was about the fury of being forced to admit that despite all their progress, all their moving on, all their new relationships and new experiences, you're still living rent-free in the architecture of their identity. One person is angry because they never got closure, never got answers, never got the apology they think they deserve, and your absence feels like abandonment even though you were the one who was abandoned first. Another person is angry because they got exactly what they wanted when you left, and now they're realizing what they wanted wasn't worth what they lost. And that realization is unbearable, so they channel it into rage at you for having the audacity to be missed. But here's the part that's really driving them insane. You're not even trying to be unforgettable. You're not posting cryptic messages hoping they'll see. You're not orchestrating situations where your name comes up. You're not playing games designed to make people fight over you. You're just existing. Genuinely, authentically existing somewhere else. building something they can't access, becoming someone they can't reach, living a life they're not invited to witness. And that unbothered energy is more provocative than any drama you could manufacture, because people can defend themselves against attacks, against manipulation, against games, but they can't defend themselves against your indifference. They can't fight someone who isn't fighting. They can't win a game you're not playing. They can't manipulate someone who stopped caring about their opinion. So your silence, your absence, your complete lack of engagement, that's the real violence. That's what's making them lose their minds. Someone in that room said you've changed, and they meant it as an insult, but everyone else heard it as a confession. Of course you've changed. You had to. You had to shed the version of yourself that tried to fit into spaces that were never built for you. You had to burn away the people-pleasing, the over-explaining, the desperate need to be understood by people who were never going to understand, because understanding you would require them to question everything about themselves. You had to die to who you were so you could be reborn as who you actually are. And that transformation, that violent, beautiful, necessary transformation, that's what they're really fighting about. Because half the room is inspired by it, sees it as proof that evolution is possible, that you don't have to stay stuck, that you can become unrecognizable to the people who thought they had you figured out. And the other half is threatened by it, sees it as betrayal, as abandonment, as evidence that you think you're better than them, which you don't. But you are better than who you used to be, and that's what they can't forgive. The truth is, they're not fighting over you. They're fighting over what you represent. You represent the possibility of escape. You represent the road not taken. You represent the courage they don't have and the freedom they're too afraid to pursue. You're the living embodiment of what happens when someone stops performing, stops apologizing, stops shrinking, stops explaining, stops participating in social contracts that drain them dry. And some people see that and feel hope. They see you and think, maybe I could do that too. Maybe I could walk away from everything that's killing me slowly. Maybe I could burn it all down and rebuild something true. But others see that and feel terror. They see you and think, if that person can change that much, then nothing is stable, nothing is permanent, nothing is safe. And if they could leave and never look back, then anyone could. And that means I could be left too. And I can't handle that possibility, so I need to destroy their credibility, destroy their reputation, destroy the idea that what they did was brave instead of selfish. Let me tell you what happened after the argument, after the almost violence, after everyone retreated to their corners, nursing their wounds and rehearsing better comebacks for next time. The one who defended you went home and thought about you for hours. Not in some pathetic, pining way, but in a way that was more like remembering a dream they once had before life convinced them to be realistic. They remembered the version of themselves that existed in your presence, the version that laughed louder, thought deeper, felt braver. They remembered conversations that didn't feel like transactions. They remembered silence that didn't feel empty. They remembered being seen without having to perform. And somewhere in that remembering, they made a decision. Not to reach out necessarily, not to chase you down and confess something they're not even sure they feel, but to start asking themselves harder questions. Like, why am I still in spaces that make me feel small? Like, why am I defending someone who's not here, instead of becoming someone worth defending myself? Like, what would it take for me to walk away from everything safe and build something real? And the one who attacked you, they went home too, but their night went differently. They checked your social media even though they swore they stopped doing that months ago. They scrolled through your life looking for evidence that you're miserable, that you're lonely, that you're failing. Then they didn't lose anything valuable when they lost you. Then they made the right choice when they chose distance. Then they're vindicated in all their criticisms and judgments. Oh, but what they found instead was the worst possible thing. They found evidence that you're fine. Not performatively fine, not posting desperate attempts to prove you've moved on, just actually genuinely fine. Happy, even. Thriving in ways that don't require an audience. Building things that matter. Surrounding yourself with people who respect your energy. Living a life that looks nothing like the one they predicted for you when they decided you weren't worth keeping around. And that discovery, that confirmation that you didn't fall apart without them, that you didn't need them to be whole, that crushed something inside of them they didn't know was still vulnerable. So they did what people always do when confronted with evidence that contradicts their narrative. They doubled down. They sent messages to mutual friends questioning your motives, your character, your authenticity. They built cases against you using evidence they cherry-picked from years ago. They rewrote history to make themselves the victim and you the villain, because if they're the victim, then they get sympathy, they get support, they get to avoid accountability for their role in whatever fell apart. And some people believed them, because it's easier to believe a simple story about a bad person than a complicated truth about two people who weren't right for each other. Goof abandoned his children. The father went and the mother, but others saw through it. Others recognized the obsession dressed up as concern. Others noticed how much energy they were investing in someone they claimed to be over. Others whispered to each other when they thought nobody was listening. If they really didn't care, why do they care so much what everyone else thinks about this person? Now, you're a legend without trying to be. You're the one who got away. You're the one who walked through fire and came out forged instead of destroyed. You're the one whose name causes arguments because nobody can agree on who you really are or what you really meant or whether you're a ghost they need to exercise or a lesson they need to learn. And the beautiful irony is that you're not sitting around thinking about any of this. You're not logging into accounts hoping someone mentions you. You're not crafting posts designed to make them jealous. You're not playing chess with people who are still playing checkers. You moved on, not in the performative way where you announce you've moved on, but in the real way where you genuinely built a life that doesn't include them, doesn't reference them, doesn't need them to validate your healing or witness your growth. That's the power move they never expected. They thought when you left, you'd crumble. They thought when you went silent, you were suffering. They thought when you stopped defending yourself, you were admitting defeat. But what you were actually doing was leveling up in a dimension they can't access. You were learning languages they don't speak. You were developing strengths they can't measure. You were becoming a version of yourself so evolved, so integrated, so whole, that their opinions about you became white noise. You don't even register anymore. And that indifference, that genuine, authentic indifference, that's more devastating than any revenge you could have planned. Because revenge means you still care. And nothing hurts more than realizing you no longer have the power to hurt someone. The argument in that room? That's going to happen again. Maybe not about you specifically, but about the void you left behind, about the questions you raised, about the standard you set without meaning to. Because now everyone in that circle has been forced to examine themselves through the lens of how they related to you, how they treated you, how they talk about you now that you're gone. Some will realize they failed the test. Some will recognize they participated in cruelty they justified as honesty. Some will understand they let something rare slip through their fingers because they were too busy trying to control it instead of appreciating it. And some will never get it, will go to their grave believing they were right about you, that you were the problem, that your absence improved their life, even as they spend years bringing you up in conversations that have nothing to do with you. But here's what's keeping them up at night, the thing they'll never say out loud. They're terrified that you're the one who got the last laugh without even trying to laugh. They're terrified that your life is better without them than it ever was with them. They're terrified that you don't think about them at all, that you don't miss them, that you don't wonder what they're doing or who they're with or whether they ever regret how things ended. They're terrified that they're a footnote in your story while you're still the main character in theirs. And that terror manifests as anger, as arguments, as almost violence, because anger is easier than admitting you missed someone you pushed away, admitting you were wrong about someone you judged harshly, admitting you lost someone you should have kept. A way where you announce you've moved on, but in the real way, where you genuinely built a life that doesn't include them, doesn't reference them, doesn't need them to validate your healing or witness your growth. That's the power move they never expected. They thought when you left, you'd crumble. They thought when you went silent, you were suffering. They thought when you stopped defending yourself, you were admitting defeat. But what you were actually doing was leveling up in a dimension they can't access. You were learning languages they don't speak. You were developing strengths they can't measure. You were becoming a version of yourself so evolved, so integrated, so whole, that their opinions about you became white noise. You don't even register anymore. And that indifference, that genuine, authentic indifference, that's more devastating than any revenge you could have planned. Because revenge means you still care. And nothing hurts more than realizing you no longer have the power to hurt someone. The argument in that room, that's going to happen again. Maybe not about you specifically, but about the void you left behind, about the questions you raised, about the standard you set without meaning to. Because now everyone in that circle has been forced to examine themselves through the lens of how they related to you, how they treated you, how they talk about you now that you're gone. Some will realize they failed the test. Some will recognize they participated in cruelty they justified as honesty. Some will understand they let something rare slip through their fingers because they were too busy trying to control it instead of appreciating it. And some will never get it, will go to their grave believing they were right about you, that you were the problem, that your absence improved their life, even as they spend years bringing you up in conversations that have nothing to do with you. But here's what's keeping them up at night, the thing they'll never say out loud. They're terrified that you're the one who got the last laugh without even trying to laugh. They're terrified that your life is better without them than it ever was with them. They're terrified that you don't think about them at all, that you don't miss them, that you don't wonder what they're doing or who they're with or whether they ever regret how things ended. They're terrified that they're a footnote in your story while you're still the main character in theirs. And that terror manifests as anger, as arguments, as almost violence, because anger is easier than admitting you missed someone you pushed away, Admitting you were wrong about someone you judged harshly. Admitting you lost someone you should have kept.